Hi guys, welcome to Everything Websites. And today, uh, my guest, I'm just gonna go cut through the chase. So my today's guest is Dan Dawson. Dan actually led the digital transformation, enterprise web architecture, and marketing operations, and at NCR Atleos. So Dan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
It's good to have you here. So just for a little bit of background, guys, so that you know that Dan was part of the team that led this major transition of NCR Atleos, which migrated multiple global web properties from Adobe Experience Manager to Webflow Enterprise. So I think it was one of the first enterprise companies that migrated, right?
We were a very early adopter of Webflow Enterprise. And in that process, actually kind of used a very novel approach. So, yeah, one of the best decisions I've ever made in
Yeah.
my career.
It's nice to hear that. And by the way, guys, just so you know that NCR is a large enterprise company with a complex internal systems and long-standing processes and strict governance around technology. So today we're just going to talk about a bit of this, uh, why enterprises got stuck in these heavy MarTech stacks, what triggers this migration, and what actually changes after switching these platforms.
Yes.
So yeah, it's a lot of things to go through. So then, can you just briefly, so to start, can you just briefly share your role in NCR at the time of migration, and how do you become involved with all of this?
Yeah. So I originally joined then NCR Corporation. I'll explain all that here. But then Corporation, uh, basically to take over an AEM implementation. I was coming from Coca-Cola, and my then former manager went to NCR. He said, "Dan, we need some help here. We need some UX help. And I know you know AEM. Can you come over?" Started as a contract role, and then they ended up hiring me full time. But um, in that process, I came in. They had just moved from Drupal to AEM.
Mhm.
There was a lot of ideas about what the future could be with AEM, got the whole sales pitch. AEM's like Adobe Experience Manager. It's been around forever. Used to be
Mm.
Communique. It was purchased by Adobe. Uh, it's a big, heavy system. It is an engineering heavy system. And, there's companies that use it really well for certain applications. But one of the things that it's a little bit overkill for is when you start getting into like a marketing website. And I think a lot of things have changed. Well, actually, many things have changed since when I was working on it in 2016. It's been a decade, literally. But I think with that, there's all this idea of what we could do, but there wasn't a lot of hands-on keyboard. There wasn't a lot of like expertise going in. So that was a big challenge. Now, from that, my role really expanded. We'll talk a lot about Webflow, but from there, originally it was UX focused on AEM. Then it evolved into really our broader web properties. Um, NCR Corporation had a few changes here and there. I started to do more marketing operations type activities. So these are things that happen in like Marketo. So email marketing, your marketing automation of like, okay, what happens to a lead as it moves into something like a Salesforce. Um, where does our digital advertising fit into this? How are we
Yeah.
measuring everything? It's kind of the big piece, right? It's everything that
Mm.
encompasses digital marketing. And then and I think it was about uh, 2023. Wow. The company decided that it was going to split into two. So
Yeah.
NCR Corporation was composed of a retail, a hospitality or basically restaurant POS type business. It had the banking business, so ATMs,
Hmm.
ATM software, hardware, and it decided that it was going to spin off the banking business. That would become NCR Atleos, where I went. And then NCR Voyix is what remains with the retail and kind of hospitality business in the POS sector. So moving into NCR Atleos, then things started to continue to get added to my plate.
Yes.
Inherited the intranet, inherited portions of the actual revenue operations aspects of things, and then a lot of data and a lot of reporting that continued to grow. Eventually, being kind of the AI leader in marketing, and a number of other things that I'm probably forgetting: privacy, legal,
Yeah.
did a lot of procurement. We'll probably talk about that here too.
hmm Do you know? It's interesting that they went from Drupal to AEM. Do you know maybe why what the decision was happened? I mean, I don't
I
know if
think
you were around the time, but
I'll be honest. I think that it was um, Adobe has a really strong sales and marketing team.
yeah.
And I think there
Okay.
was also there was some there was some connections between Adobe and the company leadership
hmm
and company IT leadership. So, that is a thing that, as anybody's kind of coming in here and looking to pitch maybe Webflow, um, and there's another big player, another big enterprise player in there, those are realities that we can talk about, and how you think about that. Um, and some of the techniques and things you can do to kind of maybe get people off of the old nobody got fired for hiring IBM concept,
hmm
um, and be able to come in with a new idea that's innovative, that may be challenging for some, but be able to answer some of the questions.
But even with that strong connections, so to say, it
Yeah.
was not enough to stay on the platform. So ultimately, you guys decided to go to something that's gonna provide more value, if I can
Yeah.
say like that.
Yeah,
Um,
I'd say so. We actually had a business case that really popped up and led to
mm,
that. And happy to tell that story. This is probably
yeah.
like a good segue in. Well, basically right in the middle of the pandemic, everybody's locked down. All of your trade shows, all of your field marketing is pretty much shut down at that point. And us being a hardware, software, and services company, a lot of that hands-on, face-to-face kind of selling is really valuable. So people are trying to think, how are we going to do this? The idea comes up: we want to build a really bespoke, unique landing page um, that is going to mirror the it's going to mirror kind of the floor of the NRF big shows. This is
hmm
National Retail Federation. It's a big retail organization, and that's their big trade show for the year. So we're thinking, like, how are we going to do this? Um, I've actually been a Webflow user um, for over 10 years at this point. And
Almost.
so back then I had some familiarity with the platform, just from
Mm-hmm.
things I'd done on my own,
Mm-hmm.
portfolio, some other side hustle type of things. And I'm knowing at this point, like, AEM's not going to work. We're looking to do something bespoke, something really unique. And even then with AEM, we were really struggling, because the time to do like CSS change at a component level you're looking at about 3 weeks at best.
Wow.
And this is for like relatively basic stuff, because it goes
Mm-hmm.
through a traditional deployment cycle of, QA stage, or sorry, dev stage, QA, and then
Yeah.
production deployment. Um, so I'm thinking, this just isn't going to work. Why don't we try Webflow? And at that point, it was just signing up
You just
for
you
this
just throw the
account.
idea like just like that.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
did. I tossed it to my VP at the time, and she's
Mm-hmm.
like, "Well, there's no other way we're going to do this. So yeah, try it."
Nice.
So I grabbed one of our really talented front end designers, who also
Mm-hmm.
you do some development, and I don't know, about a week, we had a prototype, and that prototype was good enough to where we just went with it. We didn't even rebuild it. It was exactly what we needed. And
Hmm.
that to me was a moment where I was like, okay, this is pretty unique. This is pretty interesting. Um, what would happen a few months later is that hospitality group, the restaurants group within NCR, they're really looking to launch a brand new experience on the website. At that time, you're really seeing the likes of Toast and Lightspeed, even Square to some extent, start to take market share in the restaurant POS market. And the AEM site was a very typical corporate marketing website at that point. It just was not very inspiring. We're spending more of our time trying to keep the thing live than we were really like making it compelling. And again, I kind of got got posed with this project, which I didn't really realize at the time, and was later explained to me. Dan, you were kind of like offered up as a sacrifice if you couldn't pull this thing off. Glad I didn't know, because I went in without the stress that might have. But I started to think, well, Webflow really is pretty capable. And again, I mean, this is 3 years ago, roughly. A little longer than that. More like 5 years ago. And
Yeah. So in
Webflow's
2021,
come
what?
a long way
Right.
in 5 years.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that. But
Yeah.
even then, it's still something that I felt could work. So we put together an RFP. Um, this RFP had really large global agencies pitching on it, and then it had mid-tier Atlanta agencies, large cable agencies, and then it
Hmm.
had um, a small little agency that the Webflow community will know well, Edgar Allen, pitching on it. And
Mm.
I happened to have met Mason years prior, just got coffee with him. And, I'm thinking like Webflow could work. We're going to make that as a part of this requirement. But what we needed it to do is it needed to live alongside the AEM site. And long story short, Mason and his team came with both the creative vision and the technical
Mhm.
chops to be able to make this happen. Um, we built out kind of a unique reverse proxy system. This would eventually evolve to become a product now that you can actually buy from Webflow. It's called Webflow Custom Hosting. But it allowed the Webflow site to live in the same URL path, same structure as that AEM site, but be
Yeah.
fully managed in Webflow. And that we were able to do this project under budget, on time, and that was the kickoff of everything, probably in my career. One of the best decisions. I really put my badge on the line when it came to getting it done, but
Yeah.
it wouldn't have happened. Well, I wouldn't have been with NCR that much longer if I couldn't pull it off. And without Webflow and Edgar Allen, it wouldn't have happened.
Hmm. It's a really nice story, really.
Yeah,
I didn't know much about it. I knew that Edgar Allan worked on it, but I really didn't know much. And I really like the idea that how you brainstorm through the process. You first try it
yeah,
on a couple of things to see how it works, and then you slowly but gradually introduce it to the company, and then eventually just found the perfect candidate to do the migration. I
yeah,
think Edgar Allan did a pretty good job there.
it did.
Um, yeah, and I know that in that when you're migrating such a huge company website from one platform, and by the way, didn't fully migrate, right?
At
Uh,
that time, we didn't fully migrate. Yeah, when the
yeah.
company decided it was going to do the spinoff and become NCR Voice, NCR Atleos, we had another inflection point
Uh-huh.
where, at that time we had Accenture. They kind of had the keys to the kingdom as far as like, we're going to do all the work. We've got this kind of contract with the business, and they came back with okay, we'll set up another ADM site for NCR Atleos. We're going to do, some color swaps and a little bit of content migration. I mean, between the license and the work, we were looking at north of 1.2 million just to get this other site stood up. With some, like, not even really rebranded. It's more of just kind of like a triage split. And it was going to be a problem. There's a lot of concern, from a financial perspective. Like, this is not within our split budget, right? You have a certain amount of money to do certain types of projects. You can't, a lot of those things, tend to go over, but this was like way over. So that's where, again, I went back and I said, hey, I think that you can do both of these sites under budget. I think you can actually rebrand both. Can we have Edgar Allan pitch on it? And I'll work with them and we'll come up with a plan. You guys can reject it and we'll do what, the agent or what essentially at that time was saying. But we came back and we were able to do both websites with all of the hosting, with everything from, our license with Webflow, and expanded it a good bit under what one of these sites would have cost within, kind of that initial thing. So that that definitely saved some of my IT colleagues quite a bit of pain. And I was really happy that we were able to do it because the sites at the end of the day were far better.
And this thing that you tried before deciding on a Webflow, was that just something to help you understand better the process, or do you think that also helped you convince the stakeholders, like, this is also one of the reasons, like, show them as an example, look how it looks, like how it works, maybe we can consider this?
Yeah. The build really made the difference, particularly at that time when you had Webflow. They're a pretty new company, right? They're much more of a known commodity today within kind of the CMS space, although Webflow is doing a lot more than just, web platform.
They're trying to
At
do a
that
lot of
point,
things.
yeah, it was selling somebody on a somewhat unproven product, but I came in, I'd been using this tool for about, at that time it wasn't quite, well, now it's 10 years, but I've been using it for, 5 or so years. Like, this is incredibly reliable. It's more reliable what I'm seeing within the AEM side. We're going to be able to build very quickly. You're going to allow designers that may not have all of the front end engineering experience, but have great talent and understand how to build compelling experiences on the web. They're going to be able to be now a part of what we do. We've got an agency partner who's proven themselves. I think that kind of building really made the difference in NCR, which, keep in mind, we're in a highly regulated industry. We're dealing with, our customers are some of the most sophisticated in the world, very, very large retailers, very, very large financial institutions globally. So it's very highly regulated. And when you have a company like that, they're extremely risk averse for very good reasons, because if they have problems, then it's impacting. There's very real scary data that can get out there. Now, within the marketing space, okay, we're not like putting that kind of data on the marketing website, right? But when you're talking to IT professionals, they don't necessarily separate that. They're kind of thinking things in terms of the risk is everywhere. So building up to that point was very valuable in making kind of the final pitch to do the full migration. We probably wouldn't have been able to do it without that kind of build up at that time. I think it's a little bit different today with the robustness of Webflow Enterprise, kind of a proven track record, really big companies on the platform, and also just a really absolutely pro team at Webflow, it's really kind of built the story, knows how to answer a lot of those questions.
Hmm.
Um, it can seem scary sometimes, uh, probably to want to pitch something that's going to be a lot more expensive than the off the shelf Webflow. But
Yeah.
once you start doing that, I know that Edgar Allen and in the team at Webflow, when they were kind of helping bring through the Webflow Enterprise story, they're working very closely together, and that's what Webflow is going to do because it's in their best interest, obviously, to get
Yeah.
more people on Enterprise.
Yeah, Webflow is working closely when it comes to these large migrations, and I
Yep.
think they need to, because in order to make sure that everything goes smoothly.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's very professional from Webflow that
Yeah.
having that approach. I don't think other platforms are doing things like that, like this close relationship with the
Mhm.
client. They also want to know, after the migration was done, did you guys did some of this stuff on your own? Did you have a team that also did some updates? Yeah, or also, did you also continue working with the agency that helped you build it, and how that process looked like? Like probably some parts of the things, or some things you did by yourself, and some things it was by them. How that looked like?
Yeah. So early on when we adopted Webflow, we wanted definitely my digital team uh, to be able to use the tool, be able to do your basics updating. I came in with a certain amount of understanding, and so that helped a lot. So I was able to kind of bring them up. But we also wanted to continue to advance on the platform, and I think this is a thing that is valuable to understand for agencies out there, or individual contributors, just folks that are doing like direct contract. Um, when you ship a project and it's like kind of end, if it's good work, that client's probably coming back, unless it's just one of those sites where it's like one and done, move on, right? In an
Yeah.
enterprise relationship, an enterprise website, there's always going to be some new requests. And
Mhm.
um, I would say in for a lot of enterprises, headcount within like a marketing team is a dwindling resource. It's often not getting, somebody leaves, that's kind of just it goes. So you had teams like mine that actually came to rely even more on Edgar Allen as kind of like just authoring support and keeping the website up to date. It was more cost effective, actually, in that case, or just more politically possible to work with an agency, have a contract, clear SOW, clear deliverables, and just have that and renew it either annually or quarter by quarter. Um, Being able to provide that, I think, is really valuable. And
Mhm.
then the other thing is now you've got, okay, the folks that maybe built the whole website, now they're supporting it. So they know already everything that's going on inside. Um, Now, before I left NCR, we were actually about to start increasing the utilization of Webflow from our broader marketing team. And since Webflow has been investing in kind of the different roles, um, we ended up bringing on some additional marketer level seats or a limited seat. They've got different terms, but bring on a number of them because we wanted to start getting marketers in the same platform and begin to like kind of chop down some of the silos that and end up getting created when okay, we've got a creative team here and there's a marketing team here and there's a digital team. How do you
Mhm.
how do you bring everybody together? Um, and Webflow's been investing in the platform to make that more and more possible. So that was actually something we were just about to do. But then Brinks decided to go buy NCR Atleos. So, we didn't get to do that.
Yeah. Um, can I ask, maybe you said this already, but what surprised you the most after this migration? If you compare the ways that you guys worked before and then that you are working after. So what is there something that stood out the most?
There's a couple things. I mean, just from a like, I mean, this feels like I'm just upping Webflow here, but almost like every other month we'd have an outage on AEM. There'd be something where
Mhm.
I'm getting called up at 2 a.m. We're throwing
That's a
like
serious thing. Yeah.
8, 10 engineers on a call. The website's totally down. We got to deal with it. Um,
Yeah.
we never had that happen with Webflow. It never ever happened. Um, and that, I mean, that's a testament to the robustness of the tool. All that said, we did so much more, so much faster on that site. Um, Interestingly enough, uh, before WebflowConf 2025, um,
Mhm. Bless
the
you.
Ed Garland team and I had been working on a brand new design. Um, Also with Off Brand, who did a lot of kind of there's a whole story of that. But
Yeah.
worked on a design and we're like, hey, we want to launch kind of the new homepage look and feel. Let's do it before WebflowConf. Okay, this is like a few weeks, right? Um,
Mhm.
in the world of changing that sort of thing at an enterprise level, usually like this is a year long, loaded with
Yeah.
stops and this and that. Um, we were able to kind of do it incredibly fast. I remember pushing the button um, and saying, "Okay, good." We did like a few minutes of checks. We're like, "Okay, everything looks fine. We're good." Whereas with AEM, we would have been in kind of a heightened support mode, better part of 2 weeks, just keeping an eye on the site. So that, gosh, what a nice thing. But I think now it's become like almost an expectation. It's pretty
Yeah.
wild. Once you get used to Webflow, I mean, that's kind of
Yeah.
just what you do.
It's yeah, it's a thing that people don't really understand. I mean, a lot of people don't understand how difficult it is to have these things move fast, especially in a large organization, um, and sometimes take it for granted. Uh, and especially for people like me that always work with Webflow, you don't really know the struggle of
Yeah,
these kind of things. You don't even notice. You kind of expect this happening, like it's a natural thing, like on every single
you've
platform.
gotten used to it. Yeah,
Yeah, and it's not praising platform just because of platform, but it's just it's good and it's important for people to understand that um, these kind of things can make a lot of difference. Can delay things, it can bring things on time, and yeah, there's something not to take for granted.
yeah,
Um, yeah, and okay, so you guys get gain more control with this
we
with
did.
this platform. Um, and so, what would be the next step after that?
Yeah,
How did you then approached all of this updates and things after you fully and actually how long did it took to fully grasp the platform and then start fully using it?
yeah. I mean, we really got our arms around it. I mean, going back to kind of the initial implementation on that kind of hospitality section of the site,
Hmm.
we got our arms around it fairly quickly. I don't know that it took more than maybe a week for
Well, wow, yeah, it's
front ends
fast.
to just feel like, oh, this is easy. Um,
Hmm.
what's interesting, I think, we think about breaking bureaucracy. There are some interesting unexpecteds, though, along the way um, that are worth knowing as you're starting to talk with kind of enterprises. Um, you may encounter teams that want to keep that same kind of like giant multi-stage. Everything goes through dev, and it's all going to be, there's a pull request for everything's got it's all these formal Scrum processes, which are great. They have a place, right? But they want to keep that like 3-week process of doing any
Yeah,
work. Um, and sometimes not even for like negative reasons, it's just all they know. It's like there can't possibly be something that's faster for this. So, that may have been one of the early surprising um, things I learned was that your IT counterparts, they're they're probably not going to believe that something can be that reliable that you can push updates that easily and
Mhm.
and that you can get rid of all of this like other stuff, right? Um, it's maybe changed a little bit in the last, I don't know, 3 years, but there's always this expectation things need to go through this really regimented process. Um, that's where I really think it's important to get into the tool really quick and just show people. That's why I think like Webflow having free accounts, having kind of the off the shelf, um, you
Yeah.
know, kind of site availability, that is so useful. And for an enterprise, dropping a credit card, purchasing, a business account and really kind of like playing with the tool. And
Mm.
that's, in some cases, there's sales folks that are spending far more on a sales dinner than they are for,
Yeah.
a year of being able to play around in Webflow. Um,
Yeah.
so as an agency, I mean, I do recommend there's a lot more show than tell. You're going to have a lot of maybe competing agencies are on different platforms. They're wanting to tell the story, show
Mm.
people very quickly, hey, this is how fast and easy it is to do what I'm talking about. It is real. It is here. And, you know, it may take a while for the IT team to really come around and say, okay, yeah, this is actually, you know, this isn't vaporware. This is real.
Yeah.
Um, but build towards that. I think that that's a really great strategy when you're going in and talking with a large enterprise.
But like you said in the beginning, many of these kind of decisions are happening based on connections. So
Yeah.
what kind of platform? It's not only about the platform, but like pretty
Mhm.
much almost anything. So what do you think that maybe more of these enterprise companies will consider or maybe step away from legacy platforms like AEM? Do you
I
think that's
think
gonna?
I think it is going to happen. I think that what's going to hypercharge it is the AI revolution that we're seeing.
Yeah,
Um, Now, a lot of those same companies may be thinking, "Oh, we can just go ahead and
AI
give
can do for us.
a cloud instance." So you'll
Yeah,
get Cloud Max, and they'll go and do my website. Uh, there's a lot more to running a website than just you know vibe coding it.
yeah.
I think that there is a very real need for having a robust platform um, in an enterprise context. You want to spin up a one page website? Sure, go to town on Claude. Like that'll work. Um, but you know, hundreds of pages, you're going to need something that's going to manage that a little
Mhm.
bit differently. And I think that enterprise is the same thing that is pushing them. Okay, we want to adopt AI. Well, that's a little bit of risk aversion, right? They don't want to be stuck on the old stuff. They want to go to the future, but then they also are risk averse in the sense that like, oh, okay, we need something that's reliable, and that's where a Webflow, really can win in the marketplace. Um, so like, do I see a change? I do. I also think that like when it comes to cost and expense, um, there's a lot of hidden costs with some of these legacy CMS or
Mhm.
DXP platforms. Um, they're built in a way where it's a very small group of people that can do work on them. Um, look, you can look up like AEM architect uh, rates, and those engineers get paid very well. There's not a lot of them out there.
Mhm.
Um, it's one of the reasons they get paid really well. Also, they have to have a pretty high tolerance for pain. But
Yeah.
I feel like yeah, there's gonna be places where AEM it fits the bill. I just don't think it makes sense um in probably 95 to even 99% of the marketing website use cases out there. There's just too much stuff there. Um,
Yeah.
that's why I think like a Webflow can win. As we start to see like this convergence of I want AI, I need to have speed to market. I can't have it costing an arm and a leg. But I also need this enterprise robustness and reliability.
But there's a lot of these companies are now investing in AI.
Mhm.
I think I'm not sure, but I think I also saw that Adobe is also going to invest in
Oh,
this
big
kind of
time.
not only AI but also the web development. We also saw
Yeah.
Figma invested in this, even if they're a design tool. So there is going to be probably a lot more competition, which is good. But I don't know how much of them will actually um, be on the top. So far, a lot of people still using WordPress. I don't know if you know
Oh, yeah.
that. But, like,
Yeah.
yeah, many, because it's still a very popular tool. Even if, in my opinion, Webflow is way better, but WordPress is still
Sure.
widely used tool. But I want to ask you, what is your take on AI? Since we mentioned it,
Yeah.
um, did you anyway? You guys worked on AI search improvements or anything? Because this is fairly new, so I
Yeah.
don't know how much of these things were worked on. But did
Mhm.
you had a chance to work on it?
Yeah. So Webflow is kind of our vector in, and this is an interesting thing. It's like when you're inside, sometimes things are a little different than they look outside. Um,
Mm,
and a lot of it does revolve around how the company views AI, and then probably the risk tolerance. Um, your Bay Area SaaS companies, look, their risk tolerance is extremely high, and they probably know and have colleagues that are working at OpenAI, at Anthropic, at Google, Perplexity. They have connections. They're like, okay, um,
yeah,
your traditional large enterprise company, I do think that it tends to be a bit more reactive. And AI right now is definitely, look, there's a reason it's hot. It is the future. It's not going away. No, nobody's saying that. How
yeah,
they adopt and how quickly they adopt, and then importantly, where they place resources in adoption, that's where there's the big question. For us, again, being highly regulated, having kind of a low risk tolerance, there there was adoption for AI, but it was extremely governed.
yeah,
Which at times being, in the marketing team and thinking, oh man, this is all public data that we're talking about.
yeah.
I'd shake the cage a
Biggest
little bit.
concern.
Uh, but where Webflow was bringing in AI tooling, that actually was a godsend. So things like that kind of like AI schema generation. We were a very lean team near the end, and a lot of the IT folks that we once had, they're working on other things as well. So it's like you've got to use what you got. So oftentimes you're on your own. Um, we really needed to leverage then that tooling within Webflow. That was important for us. Other companies are going to be a little bit different, right? There may be other companies where it's like, nope, our marketers are pretty much free to do what they want. Just don't touch these
You
repos.
you think
Data's
this
off.
is also
Right?
happening in the large companies as well? Like they're giving marketing team freedom? Because large companies are
I don't know.
really, yeah.
That's a really good question. I Having been on a number of different, I was on our risk analysis council, I was on our AI council. A lot of what those teams are thinking about are what's operations doing, how is product managing
Yeah.
things, sales data, all of this. So it's very sensitive stuff. Um,
Mhm.
Marketing, on the other hand, well, like we're the inverse of most of that, where you do not want your product IP making it out into the market and then people can just copy what you're doing. Um, I want every last piece of information on our marketing website to be in every single LLM, and we want the best possible
Yeah.
results, right? So
This is what you
it's complete different thinking.
yeah.
And there were times that I would have to walk through that, um, and explain, hey, I understand everything about wanting to protect this information. This is important. We got to lock that down. 100% on board. But you got this whole other thing, and the market's changing, right? We've got uh, there's like a prediction at the buyer's agent, which right now could be as simple as somebody using OpenAI,
Yeah.
using whatever, right? Or ChatGPT, whatever, for shopping. The buyer's agents will become more and more sophisticated. And if you're not showing up in the results for that buyer's agent the way you want, you may find it's not so much that um, you just may not be getting the call from the
Yeah.
potential client. That's a real threat.
Mhm.
So I think this is why it's so critical for businesses, particularly enterprises, particularly in B2B with complex sales cycles. They really need to be getting this information out there and prioritizing the best possible results in these answer engines, in these generative, engines, AOGO, all that good stuff. You really need to be there.
Yeah.
Um, but the adoption, I think it depends. It depends on how tech native and how, what's the risk tolerance within the business. That's where the adoption is. Um,
Do you think that
and
you think that also based on one particular person, or it's just it's like a shareholder meeting decision? Because it's also affect privacy, like you said, in a way.
there's a lot of players when you get into larger companies. You have your legal that's looking at
Yeah.
intellectual property, then you have legal around privacy. Then you're going to have a subset of legal that is around risk and kind of like connects with the procurement teams. You have legal around procurement itself.
Mhm.
You'll have your cybersecurity, your IT architecture, you have your IT infrastructure teams. Um, there are loads of folks in the room. When I think back to our AI council, there's probably just shy of about 30 people on that. And that was a very limited group of people, right? There's one person from one group.
Yeah.
And there's just a lot, right? Like there's a lot of things you got to consider when you're at that large of a company. Um, and that I think can be an impact on AI adoption. I think that does create opportunities for agencies and for those kind of high performing individual contributor type contractor type folks
Hmm.
to be change agents or be a vector for using AI tooling um, and bringing those kind of wins to the table for large enterprises, but doing it on their own in their own environments. Um, we could probably, and I'm sure there's folks that have the questions like, oh gosh, when I get into procurement with an enterprise, it feels so I don't even know what to expect. Um, find me on LinkedIn. Let's have a chat. But the the opportunity for these agencies to again be the change agent, where an internal team may be kind of like locked in a set of rules, I think is really really valuable. So, um, yeah, I mean, it's a real thing. Like AI is changing the world, and
Yeah.
there's the doomer perspective, and then there's more of the utopian perspective. Where we land, who knows? It's really hard to tell at this point.
Still early. Yeah.
Yeah,
I know from my perspective and everything that I know so far about these things, AI is taking place in just absorbing all the search. Uh,
yeah,
Before it was like 99% Google and maybe some others, but now it's like 60% Google and 40% AI. And probably in a couple of years, it's going to be way more AI than Google and all other traditional search engines. So the early companies adapt to this, the better. And I know from our experience that uh, in the last 6 months, probably, we got way more leads from AI search than Google, uh, just organically. So I think that's going to affect, and that's going to affect everybody. And I know there's a lot of bureaucracy, like you said, a lot of things
Yeah.
they need to go through. The bigger the company, the slower the process and the slower decision making process in general. But yeah, I think you mentioned that people don't really know how to pitch enterprise companies. I just think people maybe are not sure if they really want to do this kind of things with AI, search adjustments in these things because of all of this. Do you think that is also the case?
I
Or they
think right
just
now,
don't
yeah,
understand?
you bring up an important point. Like, are people willing to invest in AI
Yeah.
search? Um, so, talk is cheap. Everyone's going to say everything. I mean, even within the AI space, I don't know a company out there that hasn't slapped AI on a product or some aspect of what
Wow.
they do. Right. At this
Yeah.
point, it's like a requisite. If you're not doing it, uh, people aren't paying attention.
Yeah.
Um, unless maybe you're like an artisan, uh, shoemaker or furniture craftsman. I
I
don't
think
think you
it's
need
gonna
AI for
come
that.
there
But
as
that's,
well
yeah,
at some
that's
point.
different.
Yeah.
People are paying for something different there. But where I think there's still the uncertainty is everybody wants a silver bullet. Oh, you're going to go ahead and make me, show up in these AI search results and increase leads overall. But yeah, everybody wants that, right? Everybody wants to do more
Mm.
business. Everyone wants to create more revenue. Everyone wants a bigger bonus. Um, quantifying some of that, I think, is probably one of the biggest. It may be a challenge. Like, how are you going to tell? Let's say that I'm the client and I'm hiring a an AI or an AEO, GEO, SEO agency to come in here
Okay.
and improve my site. Um, well, there's a couple things that I've got to realize, right? If there isn't enough good content on my site, well, okay, that now that same agency is going to be asking me for good content, which is a whole other thing, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and if I don't want to talk about certain things, then it's a little bit on me. And that's where the agency probably has to spend some time educating me, right? Um, let's say that I do have the content. Um, now it's getting into the workflows of actually starting to make sure that it's optimized for whatever's crawling it. There's a lot of different techniques. They're all
Yeah.
evolving at a given moment. Um, some of the techniques today, we may find the the labs decide, that feels a little black hat. We're going to go ahead and change aspects of this. We don't know yet. It's absolutely the Wild West. I think with the Wild West is where enterprise companies feel a little bit weird. They're like, I'm not really sure. So if they've got lots of cash, absolutely, they're going to send out some
Yeah.
cowboys, right? Um, if they are not in that position, you may see some restriction for them wanting to spend money in the AI kind of like
Yeah.
space. Unless there is that one individual that just says, "Hey, I am willing to put my job on the line to make this happen." And that's where
Mm-hmm.
I think if you do
Same.
encounter a lead, do your best to understand, is this person willing to be a champion internally or not? Are they looking for a silver bullet? Um, or are they looking to win in a way that they may not fully understand how they need to win? They just know they need to be doing it. Um, and then help them become the hero within their organization. One thing that sometimes maybe gets lost in the process of like winning enterprise business is that anybody that is coming to you looking for a solution, there's really kind of two things. They need a transactional fix. This thing's broken, go fix it. Okay, see ya. Right? Those people exist. That could be good money. Um, but if you're going to go through the whole process of MSAs and DPAs and procurement, all that, which is a very painful process. There's no easy button there. You are probably building a much longer relationship. And you want to make sure that that individual that is putting their time and effort on the line to bring you in, that they're going to come out looking again like a hero. because they're going to be your champion. They need to be a hero in the story, right? You don't want them to get taken out. So yeah, that's an important thing. I think that's something that like Ed Ground did really well with me was, hey, make sure that I'm getting out there. Webflow did more of that good work. I mean, customer stories, things like that.
Mhm.
Highly recommend that. Build the relationship with that champion that can help. Because every enterprise is a little bit different. There's certain things that all of them do, like the best practices. And we could talk about, SIG lights and how you position yourself in the web development space, but not get classified with the, back end engineers that are going to be touching all of the really sensitive stuff. You don't want that, right? Because now you're going to go through a level of scrutiny that you're just not ready for, and quite frankly, isn't productive for anyone. But
Mhm.
certain processes exist. That's where I think it's really important to kind of understand that. But again, build that champion up.
This AI search, um, yes, I know that it's still like a very fragile topic,
Yeah.
but the more you look into it, you see that it's pretty much. I mean, always, even if something is really new, it always has a lot of things that copied from somewhere else. And
Yes.
the AI search is exactly the same thing. It's just you need to understand your buyer. You need to understand what stage they are, and you just deliver the content for that stage of their buying process. And it's basically this, and you just need to know how to read this analysis in order to produce. I know it sounds simple, but it is simple if you dive deep enough.
Once you get into it,
um,
it's not quite as simple as you hope.
yeah,
But there's a way to that. And I think
yeah.
that's really good.
Um, uh, I wanted to ask you, what is there any advice that you would give to other companies considering migration, uh, or even AI in that point,
Yeah. Yeah. So considering like a migration to Webflow or
to to a better platform? But let's say Webflow.
change off an old CMS. Um, yeah, I mean, if you're a product owner in another company and you're looking at your web presence and it's just not cutting it, or the cost is too high, or the resource allocation is too high, or hell, you're just getting pressure from senior leaders that you need to adopt this AI thing.
Hmm.
Um, I think that it's important to break down what your end objective is, and then also understand what the inputs are that you have control over. Um, going down a procurement path to bring on a new agency, a new content management platform is not for the faint of heart. You're going to be building business cases. You're going to be doing a lot of presentations. You're going to be spending as much time with the finance folks as the legal folks as everyone, right? Um, really understand what you're trying to do. Understand, can your current tool, is this going to keep you on a good path, and for how long, and how long can you live with it? Um, None of that will happen overnight. You're not going to overnight say, oh, we're just going to go switch to Webflow.
Yeah,
We're just going to, I mean, you theoretically could, but even signing an enterprise contract is going to take
decision
a little
making
bit of
process is
time, right?
longer. Yeah.
Yeah. And believe me, once you get into like all of the terms in that master service agreement, like legal shows up, and that's where, there's going to be a negotiation.
Become more
So,
complex. Yeah.
yeah, for that, for like a new CMS system, I think that to like understand really what is this thing doing for me? How big of a pain point is it? And then build a roadmap towards a migration. It doesn't have to be a overnight we're migrating. It can be similar to my path. And I would encourage every digital product owner, if you're not trying different tools out there like regularly, you're missing out on something that could be a game changer for your career. Just put it in to put the real value there. On the AI side, uh, look, if you work at a company where there's just not, they're not comfortable with AI, maybe they've given you some limited AI tooling or none at all. Well, go out there and uh, look, it is worth your time to buy a laptop um, and sign up for a chat GPT Claude and do multiple LLMs. Uh,
Mm,
if you stick with one, you're missing out on a lot, and they all kind of have their own benefits. Um,
yeah.
I found myself really gravitating towards Claude. Chat GPT. I'm starting to play with Codex after playing with Claude Code quite a bit.
I didn't try it,
Want to
but
feel what Codex can do. It's
yeah.
surprising. But then also like Gemini,
Hmm.
I look, Nano Banana and everything that I am just mind blown half the time. I'm like,
Yeah.
it did exactly what I wanted. Like, and I simple prompts, kind of one shotted that thing. So, um, you have to be doing it at this point. Even if you're working in a space where there's just a discomfort, and tell your boss, hey, we know this is a thing. I know there's discomfort. I have got my laptop. I'm going to put my laptop on my hotspot on my phone. It will not touch any corporate systems. I'll walk to
Hmm.
the cafe down the street, but can I have an hour? Um, Hour a day, get what you can, right? To
Yeah.
really investigate on this thing, because I think there's something here. You have to be doing it right now.
Really love your process. I think your innovate innovation thinking way or process is something that maybe even saved NCR from the downfall of this new age of technology and all of these things. And I think if more companies are like that and have people like that, would be better off than uh, because otherwise it's just they never. I mean, they need innovation. If companies are not innovative, they're just missing out and
Yeah.
they're dragging everything down. So I think this is very important. Thank you for sharing all of this. We're getting close. Is there anything for the end that you wanna say to people? You can even say where they can reach out to you, chat with you, or things like this.
Yeah. Well, absolutely reach out. I know for folks up and down kind of the experience ladder, you could have a very, mature agency. You could be, just starting out in your journey. Um, Feel free to reach out. I'm largely using LinkedIn right now. I'm doing kind of an overhaul of my portfolio, but I'll be setting kind of my personal URL. It's just dan@dandawson.org. I'm probably gonna have that redirect to LinkedIn for the time being, but that'll be great. You can always message me, connect there. I'm happy to share my thoughts on how to go through and work with an enterprise. What are the things to consider? How to position yourself? Should you get the opportunity to move
Hmm.
quickly and not get surprised? What are some of the things you may want to investigate investing in early? Um, what are some of the ways to counter terms that may put you in a position you're not comfortable with? And then also where to consider what terms actually matter. There's some things that can seem scary that you can spend a lot of time trying to negotiate on. And if you're really small, it just means you're going to lose business. Um, but where should you put your efforts? And what should you expect? Most enterprises are going to want you to do. So, absolutely happy to be a resource, and yeah, please connect. That's great.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan, so much for this really amazing conversation. I really enjoyed with you sharing all of these experiences from this different point of view. And yeah, that's it, guys. You can check more episodes online and see you next time. Thank you then
Awesome.
again.
Thanks again.